Welcome. After explaining in previous videos what liquidity is and how it is created, in this video I'll explain how to find it. There are two main ways to identify liquidity. The first method is using volume and calculating net volume versus total volume to identify energy. Then, comparing total volume to average volume across different segments to identify mass. And many more mathematically demanding calculations that institutional algorithms usually perform automatically. Measuring rigidity versus liquidity over time. In simple terms, this means measuring how much energy and mass are being invested relative to how much the price actually moves, essentially looking for absorption or exhaustion. We also measure the length of the movement as a percentage relative to opens, closes, and rapid arbitrage cycles. In this video, we'll explain how to identify liquidity through Wyckoff-based price action and the fractality of Mandelbrot. We'll use a block system, based on block logic and the contraction of blocks over time. To identify liquidity, we will always start with the highest time frame that allows us to capture a basic price movement and deviations from higher highs and lower lows, which are the building blocks of the block system. From there, we'll progressively narrow down the ranges by moving through time and shifting our perspective to the shorter time frames. Liquidity is not a line. Liquidity is a price range. You can think of it like a pool. What I'm doing here is marking the extreme ranges of higher time frames in order to progressively narrow down the range until I can understand where the pool with the highest concentration of liquidity is located. The overlapping ranges are the centers of gravity that indicate the location of the primary liquidity pool. You have to understand, liquidity is not a line, and it does not exist at one exact price. It is everywhere. The question is where it is most concentrated. That is where the magic happens. And what is the magic? The magic is polarity. Either 180-degree polarity, which represents continuation, or 360-degree polarity, which represents rejection. Think of a magnet. It first attracts the price toward it. Then, when the price reaches it, it turns around and pushes the price away. In which direction? The answer is hidden in the higher time frame. And this is exactly why we started from the higher time frames and moved downward. You can think of liquidity like the electrical impulse generated by the heart to make it expand, creating the pulse. After a liquidity pool has acted through polarity and consumed the pool, that same pool remains relatively valid. We can call this backside liquidity. This is liquidity that forms when price moves away from those who are positioned in the wrong direction. When price eventually returns to their entry point, the emotional turbulence created by the fear they experienced causes them to exit with a sigh of relief at break-even. The leveraged position that gets closed injects the opposite orders into the system. And this is how backside polarity is created. Well, the rest of the analysis is about combining static and dynamic price ranges. This is simply to demonstrate how an understanding of liquidity and the way we identify it across different market spaces can be combined with other elements of analysis. Basically, you don't need all of these markings. You only look for the lines that are relevant to your objective. What time frame do you want to trade? How much risk are you willing to take? And what exactly are you looking for? For this purpose, after narrowing down the ranges, you generally need more than 3 condensed price ranges. The interactions between static and dynamic liquidity create confluence points that suggest that, assuming the structure holds and the expansion continues, we can already see how the liquidity points created by the fork begin to form a new market structure. For now, validation has not yet occurred, but it is getting close. And we can already understand and see all the points that are guiding it toward generating a signal. It is important to remember that below the current price, outside the perspective of our present view, there is very strong weekly liquidity to the downside. And the overall direction has still not changed. We have to keep the broader structure in mind. Everything else is noise. There is still no bullish validation here.